I found out my retirement wasn't just numbers on a page, it was a target on my back. The night my bank flagged a voice that sounded exactly like mine trying to switch my two-factor phone, I realized the breach wasn't a hacker in some far-off room. It was closer, my own family blurring care into control, fairness into access, and love into leverage. A guardianship petition landed like a verdict on my competence. A spreadsheet arrived dressed as compassion, and the line between helping and taking snapped. The ugliest cut wasn't the fraud attempt, it was the sentence my son posted for the world to judge. Some dads keep money better than they keep kids. That's when I drew the boundary. No screen shares, no withdrawals, no decisions by pressure. If I was going to lose them, it wouldn't be because I couldn't say no, it would be because I finally did. Ask me before you look. Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're watching from. And as you watch, don't just sit back. Be part of the experience. If a moment grabs your attention, whether it's powerful, unexpected, or deeply moving, drop a comment with the timestamp of that scene and share your thoughts. Your reactions bring the story to life, and we love seeing which moments resonate with you the most. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now grab a coffee or tea, settle in, and let's begin. The bay wakes before I do. A cold marine smell pushes through the cedar boards, and the sodium streetlights outside fade from orange to a tired blue. I'm up at 5:30, same as always, padding across the kitchen in wool socks, grinding dark roast and letting the kettle hiss. Steam lifts off the mug. The first swallow is a small contract with the day. Keep it simple. Keep it steady. I make a slow circuit of the house, an old electrician's reflex. Breakers, porch light, thermostat, all behaving. On my way back, I pause at the water heater closet to watch the pilots flicker, then settle at the kitchen table. The tabletop is clear except for a yellow legal pad and a pen capped straight. I open the slim binder stamped Hargrove Retirement Plan and write yesterday's date beside an IRA auto transfer confirmation. Next page, the 401k contribution log, neat columns marking pay periods, catch-up contributions penciled for when I turn 60. Safety is arithmetic you repeat until it becomes muscle. The garage smells like cold metal and pine dust. On the pegboard, every wrench and driver hangs in its trace silhouette, cords coiled without a kink. The district's laminated evacuation map is thumbtacked beside a postcard of Chuckanut Drive, my road trip line sketched in cautious loops. Bakery, overlook, motel with thin walls and hot coffee. I don't keep a bucket list. I keep a well-maintained ladder and a map with reasonable distances. Aspiration works better when the rungs are close together. Denise and I broke the marriage the way people break tools they've worn past tolerance, slowly, without throwing it. Nights, weekends, recitals, I promised to catch next time. The next times dissolved into overtime and emergency calls. I don't spend much energy blaming either of us. Regret is heavy enough without a handle. What I own is the space I didn't fill when Tyler needed a ride, when Emma needed quiet attention, when both of them needed a father who wasn't counting hours. I keep an easy truce with the kids now, a cordial distance. Holiday dinners where the gravy steals the conversation, polite texts about games and weather, birthday Venmos that feel like postcards with numbers. Still, memory has its own highlight reel, a Little League pop fly, Tyler tracked with his mouth open, a cardboard volcano Emma set off on the porch, eyes bright behind safety goggles, a gray ferry sliding through fog while seagulls wrote careless cursive above us. Affection survives in these small preservations. By 7:30, I'm in the truck, wipers whispering over dew, local radio, mumbling forecasts, and a Mariner segment already dreaming about spring. The school district campus is quiet and institutional, a maze I know like my palm. I sign a vendor log for a pump replacement, check a row of fire panels, show a rookie how to test an emergency light without setting off a chorus. Competence is a calm animal. It doesn't ask to be praised, only fed with the next task. Evening brings me back through the same streets, darker now, the bay folding into ink. The house is modest and orderly. Leftovers wear masking tape labels like name tags from yesterday's reunion. A note on the fridge reminds me to pick up clams for chowder on Saturday. I lock the back door and listen to a distant boat horn. I could turn on a show and let it talk at me, but quiet keeps better company. The silence in this house is clean, not accusing. In the bedroom closet, behind flannel stacked square, sits a small fireproof safe. Inside, the binder rests beside a USB of scanned documents and my father's union pin, still bright. There's a card with a passphrase handwritten in block letters, an honor date encrypted into a string only I'd parse. Those numbers are not about access. They're about a morning when a man came home with grease on his hands and a certificate folded in his jacket. And I learned value before I learned valuation. Before bed, I write a single line in a little black notebook. Retire at 63, debt-free, hiking legs under me, snow shovel in February without a groan. I underline the note about buying long-term care insurance this year so the kids never have to argue over my pills. The plan is plain, but plain things hold. A roof, a routine, a binder with tabs that don't curl, that's my wealth. It took me 3 decades to believe that enough can be its own ambition. Loneliness moves through the house at sundown like a shallow draft slipping past pilings. I don't mind it so much anymore. I set one porch light to burn until 10 and stand at the window, watching the reflection of the bay ripple in the glass. The phone face down on the counter gives a small mosquito hum I ignore. Quiet is a skill, you can lose it if you keep feeding every trimmer. After 10, I flip the phone and clear the lock screen. A neutral text from Denise about a charity day at the dental office. I thumb a polite reply and mean the well wishes. A muted family group chat shows a handful of unread messages, yellow badges waiting like sealed envelopes. I leave them for morning. Boundaries are not walls, they're gates you decide when to open. I wash the mug, dry it to a squeak, and return it to its place like closing a circuit. When I turn off the kitchen light, the room becomes a mirror, my face superimposed over the dark water beyond the glass. The house is well locked. The plan is well made. I can list the systems I've checked and the contingencies I've rehearsed. Still, as the heater breathes and the bay settles, I feel something subtle shift. The way a seal in a hull might loosen by a hair, soundless, patient, sure of itself. I tell myself it's only weather. Then I listen harder. Evening comes in slate and salt. Wind works the porch chimes into a thin metallic clatter, and the bay beyond my windows looks like hammered pewter under a low sky. I reheat yesterday's chowder and stand with the spoon in my hand until the microwave beeps. The house holds its usual quiet, the useful kind. Then the muted family chat icon brightens on the phone, a steady blue pulse on the counter. I know before I look that it won't be a recipe or a mariner's score. Emma's message sits at the top, neat as her handwriting used to be on science fair boards. Dad, can we talk tonight about money? The words are careful and trimmed of apology. A thumbs up pops from Tyler a beat later, then a calendar gift that flashes through days too fast. Denise adds a line about being able to join briefly. A mild pressure gathers behind my eyes the way air announces weather before the clouds bother to do it. I want to be available. I also want to stay inside the fences I've finally built. I take the phone to the table and open my notebook. On a new page, I print a heading, what I can offer tonight, time, clarity, respect. Under that, a simple list. 1 hour, no on-the-spot decisions, no screen sharing, no numbers on camera. Boundaries don't have to be dramatic, they just have to exist before the moment asks for them. I angle the small lamp so it warms the paper and text the group. Video in 10. They come on with the tidy geometry of a split screen. Tyler's in a Spokane apartment backlit by the smear of a neon street sign. The color slides across his wall like a restless fish. Emma's in a living room that looks borrowed from a faculty lounge. Books stacked vertical and horizontal. Sticky notes in a coordinated flock behind her monitor. Denise has angled her phone in the dental office break room. A humming fridge makes her words vibrate in the air. I register these details as facts, not faults, snapshots of lives moving quick. Emma goes first, her voice pitched for a counseling session. She talks about intergenerational fairness, about wanting to make sure everyone is secure, about rising costs that erode good intentions. She says they've heard estimates of my retirement accounts and worry about health shocks. The phrasing is gentle, but the center of it is not whether I have enough. It is that someone else thinks they know how much enough is. A question opens like a hatch. Where did the estimates come from? Tyler fills the space Emma leaves. He sketches the shape of his logistics startup with words that sound like acceleration, runway, velocity, scale. There's a 6-month bridge he needs, a promise of quick payback once a contract lands. He is bright-eyed, and beneath his brightness, I see the old teenage impatience with power tools, the urge to use them before you've read the instructions. I keep my voice even and ask for a pause, a moment to understand the source before the request. Emma explains that a friend in benefits can see ranges and ballparks and general pictures, nothing specific, nothing invasive, just enough to know I'm in a good position. Denise adds a glue sentence about nobody prying. I feel a small click in my chest, the sound of a bolt sliding. The number is not the issue, permission is. Consent before access is a principle you can write on a wall. I choose process over argument. I say the family can absolutely talk about plans, but those talks need an invitation and an agenda. Money is not a surprise party. I lay out my guidelines in a steady sequence. I won't share screens. I won't make decisions live. Any help must fit the retirement architecture I've built and the healthcare contingencies that go with getting older. I'll listen tonight. I won't decide tonight. It's the only sentence I let stand as a spoken rule. The call ripples. Emma's face softens, a flash of embarrassment passing through like sun behind thin cloud. Tyler stiffens at the word process, hearing delay, maybe distrust. Denise's eyes travel to the side as if there's a clock just out of frame. Under all of it, I recognize competing fears braided together. Their worry about scarcity, my worry about being treated like a reservoir that refills itself, everyone's worry that illness changes the math. Numbers arrive anyway. Tyler says an amount that sits casual in his mouth and heavy in my ear. Emma suggests a monthly share that could stabilize everyone, a phrase that makes me hear obligation, not request. Wind finds the chimes again and shakes them hard enough to tangle. I breathe in through my nose and write another line in the notebook. No on-the-spot commitments. The quiet discipline of pen on paper steadies the room. I ask for 24 hours to think, then propose a follow-up in person later in the week, coffee on neutral ground. Emma nods, relieved by a plan that isn't a verdict. Tyler lifts a hand in a quick half-wave that could mean agreement or fatigue. Denise thanks me for hearing them, the way you thank a receptionist for fitting you in. The screens go dark one by one until the phone shows me my own face, flat and surprised. The microwave clock blinks 8:02 as if time can be boxed into tidy minutes the way we try to box money into tidy categories. I stand at the window and watch the porch light throw a cone onto wet boards. A gull cuts through the reflected street lamp, leaving a bright scar across the puddle that closes itself a moment later. My mouth tastes faintly metallic, the old signal that a line somewhere has been crossed. Maybe it was crossing when the first estimate changed from rumor to certainty, when the shape of my future became a spreadsheet object in someone else's story. I rinse the bowl, wipe the counter dry, and return the towel to its bar so the kitchen looks as calm as I want to feel. Back at the table, I print 3 words beneath tonight's notes: consent before access. I draw 2 lines under the sentence, then cap the pen and turn off the lamp. The chimes go quiet as the wind drops. The house holds steady. In the morning, I'll go to work and walk the usual circuits with my usual keys. For now, I listen to the heater breathe and tell myself that a plan built over decades can stand a single conversation. Somewhere under that confidence, something small and patient taps like a drip you can't yet find. Chapter 3 will begin with the sound. The email arrives before the sun. Subject line in a sober font. Action required. Hardship withdrawal request. Pending verification. I stare until the letters lose meaning, then swallow and read again. The sender domain is real. The footer formatted exactly like every quarterly notice I've dutifully filed. My name is there, along with the last four of my social, correct as a key that shouldn't be in any other palm. Coffee tastes metallic on my tongue. The electrician in me shoves the man aside and reaches for the breaker. I dial the plan hotline from the landline and work through the gauntlet. Security questions. Temporary freeze on all disbursements. Manual review flags set on withdrawals and beneficiary changes. A new passphrase added, not stored anywhere my kids can photograph while I'm pouring gravy. I ask for written confirmation by email and post. My voice sounds like I'm reading from a work order. Isolate load, cool components, inspect for damage. Panic is a tool that strips screws. Procedure is the one that doesn't. The world outside is frost and breath. I drive to the district with the radio talking about black ice and early buses. Routine keeps moving as if nothing has shifted beneath it. I sign a vendor's clipboard for a pump replacement, test a set of fire panels, and show the rookie a trick for popping an emergency light without waking a hallway. Every sound is thinner today, like hearing through drywall. On my lunch break, I print the email and slide it into a new folder labeled Retirement, Security. Paper has weight that a screen cannot simulate. I need the heft in my bag. I come home earlier than usual and see Tyler's pickup shouldered up to the curb, engine ticking as it cools. He meets me at the door in forward motion, a quick hug already turning into a path toward the kitchen table. The laptop opens with a soft, mechanical promise. The room fills with growth curves and clean fonts. He talks about customer acquisition cost, average ticket size, recurring routes. There's a pilot ready and a runway that will carry him to profitability if it exists at all. I write neutral notes and listen longer than he expects. Beneath the story, I hear the wobble between receivables and payroll, the thinness of a margin that depends on 3 yeses arriving on schedule. I talk about compounding and tax penalties for early withdrawals, about a ladder I've been building one rung at a time since before he could button his own jersey. He doesn't roll his eyes. He clenches his jaw the way he did when a coach benched him for swinging at trash. The room tilts toward argument, and I level it with a flat sentence I've practiced. I don't make decisions the day I hear a plan. I let the sentence rest on the table like a tool you might pick up later. A knock interrupts the quiet standoff. Emma stands in the doorway, coat speckled with Tacoma rain that the clouds carried north. She squeezes my arm, sets a printed spreadsheet beside Tyler's deck, and smooths the top edge with a thumb. The title reads Intergenerational Support, Shared Stability. The numbers are gentle but firm, a monthly family share from my retirement income that would, in her words, remove uncertainty. I appreciate her discipline. I also notice what shifted in the language. The ask has slipped toward assumption, as if fairness is a force billable to whatever is most solvent. Consent feels smudged at the edges. Tyler calls Denise and puts her on speaker. Background hum of a break room fridge, the faint click of a door closing. She smooths the slope in a voice polished by 1,000 patient phone calls. A small temporary advance would buy time, and later we could rebalance. Later is an elastic word. I look at my kids and see fear braided with hope. I look at the table and see a line I have to trace with a pen so everyone stops pretending it's not there. I lay out rules in a quiet stack. No early withdrawals, no guarantees, no co-signing, no mixing of retirement funds with any loan-like promises. I will help with introductions to a SCORE mentor. I will sit with Tyler while a cash flow statement turns from pitch to reality. I will point Emma toward a stronger personal emergency fund. Small, time-bound gifts are on the table, never loans from the retirement ladder. I won't open screens or quote balances. Healthcare and longevity stay funded first. The words are not a verdict. They are the only way I know to keep us from becoming a family whose love is measured in automatic transfers. The laptop lid snaps shut with more drama than Tyler intends. Emma's eyes shine but hold. Denise sighs softly, then thanks us. We let dinner happen because habit is a kind of truce. Reheated chicken and potatoes, forks tapping ceramic like patient rain. Conversation drifts to a neighbor's new dog and a traffic snarl on the viaduct. The refrigerator hum grows a spine, as if the appliances have taken sides and chosen to buzz in my defense. After they go, I wipe the table down until it squeaks. I log the day in my notebook. Freeze set, boundary stated, alternatives offered. Tyler's deck and Emma's spreadsheet go into a new manila folder that finds its place in the closet safe behind flannels folded in squares. The motion of locking metal feels reassuring, but it's also a confession that reassurance has become something I have to manufacture. Dark settles hard. I make a slow pass through the house, hand on each latch to feel the click. On the counter, my phone buzzes, an alert without a sender's name. New device sign-in attempt, it says, no context offered, like a cough from behind a closed door. I silence the screen but leave it face up. The porch light casts a fan of pale over wet boards, and a smear of neon from a distant boulevard draws itself like watercolor in the puddle by the steps. The bay wind has a new edge. I breathe with it and listen for the next sound, the one that tells me whether this was a single shiver or the start of something that intends to shake loose the bolts I've tightened for years. The morning after the alert, light comes thin over the bay, as if the sun is testing whether the day deserves it. I sit with coffee that cools faster than it should and reread last night's entry. Freeze set, boundary stated, alternatives offered. The words hold like knots on a rope. Fear still moves under them, a cold current I can't see but can feel in the way my hands choose steadier motions than usual. I open the browser and book the first available session with Dr. Alana Pierce. When the confirmation email lands, my shoulders drop the smallest degree, like a breaker settling into its slot. Her clinic smells faintly of eucalyptus, and the carpet hushes footfalls so even an apology would sound careful. A wall clock clicks without hurry. Dr. Pierce listens while I describe the email, the pitch decks, the fairness spreadsheet, the alert from Tacoma that turned the air sharp. She nods and gives me a sentence you could frame above a doorway. No is a complete sentence. Then she hands me index cards she has labeled in her clean print, gift, loan, promise, privacy, and asks me to role-play how each one tends to slide into the next if we aren't disciplined. By the third pass, I hear my own weak spots. Gifts that grow roots, promises offered to quiet a room that come back later with teeth. We build a small script. Ask, offer, limit. She asked me to use it today. Back home, I clear the table and write the family boundary email with the care I used to give a live circuit. I begin with respect and plain affection. Then I outline green lines. I'll mentor weekly, introduce Tyler to SCORE and SBA resources, and give each of them $200 a month for 6 months tied to milestones. Tyler completes a cash flow reality check and meets a mentor. Emma builds a $1,200 emergency fund. Red lines, no early 401k or IRA withdrawals, no guarantees or cosigns, no live balance screens, no third-party checks. Process. We'll meet in 30 days for coffee, review progress, and I want acknowledgments in writing. I read it aloud once to hear the breath, then hit send and watch the message leave like a small boat in a rough line of waves. I suggest dinner on neutral ground and we meet at the Salmon Grill downtown. Lemon wedges glow in our water glasses. The TV above the bar flips through Mariners highlights without sound. I apologize for absences without bargaining and tell them the story of my father's union pin, the day he came home with grease on his hands and a certificate folded in his jacket. Pride quieter than celebration, but sturdier. Emma's shoulders ease. Tyler's voice lowers a register. Denise watches, arms crossed, giving me the courtesy of not interrupting. For a few minutes, we talk about Emma's students and a software vendor that can't seem to bill Tyler correctly. The char on my salmon catches and tastes like campfire. I say I will price long-term care insurance this year so they won't have to guess who pays for my knees. The concession lands as future-facing, which is where concessions belong. Back in the house, the quiet has a better temperature. Then the phone chirps. A fresh sign-in detected on the retirement portal, location tag, Tacoma. I don't accuse, and I don't reply. I jot the timestamp, note the device type, and write one line in the notebook. Verify source calmly. I sleep in pieces, my brain standing in a hallway listening for a door I hope doesn't open. Morning puts me in the fraud unit's queue. I request access logs and a GOIP summary, ask for an attestation letter, switch my second factor to a hardware key only, shut down SMS fallback, and add a flag that forbids troubleshooting over the phone. Paper arrives by email first. I print and file it into the Retirement Security folder, the one with growing weight. Procedure steadies the hands that fear would make clumsy. I text Emma and ask for coffee to help me decode a Tacoma ping. We meet at a quiet place whose espresso machine exhales like a tired animal. She admits she asked a friend in benefits to look at ranges to make sure I was secure. Her fingers work the seam of the cup sleeve. I tell her a principle instead of a verdict. Consent before access. I let silence sit. In the middle of that silence, my phone buzzes. The administrator's update arrives with the kind of clarity that doesn't raise its voice. The IP address resolves to the dental office where Denise works. The access came while Denise stepped out. It was performed on a staff terminal by a student intern, Emma's close friend. Emma blurts what I already understand. She asked for a peek, just to be sure. It wasn't theft, it was care, turned into trespass. The harm is not dollars. It is the erosion of a boundary I was trying to teach by living it. I make my voice level and set consequences that are rails, not whips. I'll file a cease and desist to the office about unauthorized access. I want a written acknowledgement from Emma that these peaks stop now, and I want her friend's statement that nothing was retained or shared. From here on, money conversations will run by email with counsel copied so we can remember what we said. Emma nods, eyes wet and steady, and says she's sorry. I tell her I'm listening. The email to Denise is short and factual. What the logs show, what the office needs to do, what liability looks like in plain daylight. She replies that she didn't know, apologizes in a clipped sentence, and promises to retrain staff on locking terminals. I print both emails and slide them into the folder. Process replaces adrenaline. It doesn't banish it, but it gives it a job. In the notebook, I start a new page. What I can control. Authentication, documentation, pace. What I won't carry, other people's urgency. I schedule the 30-day check-in, keep the gift framework intact, and reopen the bookmarks for long-term care policies. Outside, the bay shifts from steel to amber. The house is quiet without being brittle. I close the safe and set the union pin on top of the binder where I can see it when I pass. Breakers thrown early keep storms from becoming fires. Out over the water, clouds stack anyway, darker at their bases, and the wind begins to test the windows for places it might get in. Chapter 5 is already on the horizon. If you're still watching and the so-called peak felt like a breach, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. What we uncover next won't be easy to hear. Morning comes pewter gray, the bay a sheet of hammered metal that doesn't grant reflections. I set the red folder on the table and breathe through the ritual. Logs from the plan administrator, printouts of the boundary email, Gerald's intake form. I read each piece as if it's a breaker label in a dark basement. Calm, but by decision, not by hope. 3 points I rehearse until they click into place. No withdrawals, no guarantees, non-cash help only. The kettle ticks off. I let the coffee go cold and don't mind. Cold means my hands were busy. Gerald Park's office is a converted craftsman with rain beating on the railing. The brass plaque is dull with honesty. Inside smells like lemon cleaner and law books that have absorbed 100 different arguments and kept only their edges. A tabletop fountain throws soft white noise into the corners. The conference room holds an oval table, a neat stack of legal pads, a carafe of water with lemon slices drifting like coins. I pick the chair that faces the window. Habit, a psychological exit you don't need until you do. Tyler arrives first, laptop bag unzipped, knee bouncing in quarter notes. Emma comes with a folder of neatly printed spreadsheets, pen aligned on top, breath paced like someone who has practiced being steady. Denise last, phone face down on the table, jaw set to, "Let's keep this efficient." Gerald shakes hands with the cadence of a person who never rushes the first verb. He sets ground rules in a measured tone. We're clarifying, not committing. We'll take turns. No decisions are expected or requested today. This is a room for daylight, not leverage. He lays out a primer like a good shop teacher. Early withdrawals from retirement accounts trigger taxes and penalties. Co-signing at this stage ties liability to a tail you can't outwalk. Protecting health and longevity funding is not selfishness, it's adult maintenance. He nods at the phrase I brought on paper, consent before access, and slides a legal pad toward me. I set the red folder on the table. The color looks louder than I intended, but maybe loud has its uses. I present the logs without heat. Tacoma IP, dental office terminal, intern credentials active while Denise stepped away. I say, "This happened," and leave the sentence unadorned. Intent is fog. Impact is rain you can measure. Denise nods once and says she's retraining her staff. The words are brief, but land with the weight of someone who knows policies are only as strong as the minute a person goes for coffee. Emma meets my eyes and doesn't look away. I see mortification and care braided tighter than either is by itself. Tyler gets 3 minutes and makes them count. Route density, customer acquisition cost, a pilot poised to convert if a runway exists. His vocabulary is a motor that wants throttle. Gerald asks 2 clean questions about the cash conversion cycle and burn rate, and small holes appear in the timing like pinpricks you only notice when you hold the story to the light. I write notes without commentary. The electrician in me respects a circuit drawing even when it shows a loop that will overheat. Emma explains her fairness framework. A predictable monthly family share would, in her mind, lower uncertainty and smooth anxiety about my future care. Love as a retainer, kindness on autopay. Gerald reframes with care. Intentions can be good while instruments are poor. Turning retirement assets into an ongoing obligation converts family into a ledger and invites dependency to live in the house rent-free. Emma listens harder than most people listen in rooms like this. It is a skill she will someday teach others, and the thought makes me proud even as my ribs feel tight. I state my rules on the record not as a wall but as a load-bearing beam. No early withdrawals from 401k or IRA. No co-signing or guarantees. I won't attach my name to anyone else's risk structure. No screen sharing, no live numbers. Small, time-bound gifts only, tied to milestones we agree on in writing. Strong preference for non-cash help, SCORE mentors, SBA resources, vendor introductions, reality checks. I'll help with skills and structure. I won't undermine my retirement. The sentence sits clean on the table between us. I do not raise my voice to hand it over. Gerald proposes a family boundary agreement, short, readable, not a cudgel. Mutual privacy, no third-party peeks, no access attempts. Process, requests in writing, 24 to 48 hours to reflect, no live decisions. A menu of support, mentorship, introductions, limited gifts with milestones, 30-day reviews, no loans from retirement funds. An explicit acknowledgement that my healthcare and longevity funding stay first. He will send a draft by day's end. I like that phrase, by day's end. It confers a limit on the hours, which is how fire does not jump rooms. The emotional weather shifts. Tyler bristles at process, hears delay where I hear oxygen. His fingers drum a quick tattoo. The laptop lid closes with a soft clap. Emma whispers a simple apology about the intern peak. Denise oils the slope with a tested line about a small, temporary advance we could rebalance later. Later is elastic in all families. It can stretch across years and snap back around your neck like a loop. I hold still and let the elasticity lose its glamour. I thank everyone for stepping into daylight. I repeat the no withdrawal stance and decline numbers because numbers are gasoline in rooms like this. I offer concrete next steps. Tyler will meet with a SCORE mentor, build a cash flow that counts the dull parts and not just edge cases. Emma will construct an emergency fund so stability lives somewhere other than my ledger. I will source long-term care insurance quotes this quarter. We will reconvene in 30 days to review progress. This is not a verdict. It is scaffolding for a useful month. We pause. Tyler exhales and says he gets it, that the runway clock doesn't care about anyone's principles. Emma nods. Denise thanks Gerald and glances at her phone as if the office can feel her absence like a missing tooth. Rain thickens outside, hissing off tires in the street. We exchange clipped, polite goodbyes on the porch. Lemon Cleaner follows us to the steps and then thins out into the smell of wet wood and an afternoon that looks older than it is. At home, I log the meeting, facts stated, risks named, agreement proposed, rules affirmed, next steps assigned. The red folder slides into the drawer behind retirement security, as if the two want to sit close. I brew tea instead of coffee. It sends a different signal to the nervous system, one that says the work of saying no is done for now. I email Gerald a thank you and block the calendar for 30 days out, along with a note to call an insurance broker who answers his phone. The phone buzzes with a social notification I ignore. Somewhere online the air is moving, but every system doesn't need my hand at once. I turn on the porch light and watch it carve a clean cone into the steady rain. Inside, the breaker stays down. Outside, the storm rehearses what it wants. I have learned to trust the room I've built and to label the switches. If the next strike comes from outside the walls, I will still be ready to reach for the right lever by feel in the dark. Morning flattens the bay into gray tin, gulls carving ragged lines through air that tastes like metal. I make tea instead of coffee and check the calendar blocks I drew after the lawyer's office. 30-day review, long-term care quotes, a no-screens window after 9. Notifications crowd the top corner of my phone like gnats that have found fruit. I refuse to tap them. The day will get my attention on purpose or not at all. When I finally look, the trickle is a current. Tyler's vague story, some dads keep money better than they keep kids, has been shared and reshared. Screenshots framed in comments that break into factions. On one side, hustle philosophers talking about leverage and the dead weight of caution. On the other, people with scars from night shifts who know what a bill does to a man who thought he'd planned. I screen capture the thread, save URLs into a folder I label context, social, and close every app until the icons go still like eyes that have decided to blink. Private, not performative. I write Tyler a short email with a tone that won't give anyone a bruise. I offer a 12-week mentoring cadence for cash flow, collections, and vendor terms with a score introduction and no guarantees or cosigns. If by week 12 his verified cash flow clears a number we defined together, I will gift a modest, fixed amount as a seed of trust, not a bridge from my retirement. I log a copy in the family, counsel folder and move on before second-guessing can pull me sideways. Then I write to Emma. I propose a guided plan to build her emergency fund so stability stops living on my ledger. I attach a flyer for a boundaries and care workshop and suggest that later she could co-facilitate. I restate the sentence that anchors the room. Consent before access. If she wants to practice asking without peeking, I'll role-play until the script feels less like a barricade and more like a doorbell. Security chores come next, the kind of list that calms a nervous system because it produces receipts. I rotate the passphrase, verify the hardware keys, add a bank talk-off code only I can answer cleanly, freeze my credit at the bureaus, enroll in takeover alerts. Each confirmation lands in email. Each printout slides into the retirement security folder with the satisfying weight of paper. Labeling circuits keeps the lights on when something smokes. At noon, the mail carrier thumps a certified envelope onto the mat. Superior Court of Washington is printed in a font that never jokes. Inside, a petition for limited financial guardianship. Petitioner, Emma Hargrove, hearing 3 weeks from Thursday. Allegations cite an article about elder financial decline and concerns over judgment, with social posts referenced as community input. My pulse beats in my ears for 3 rounds, and then the old technician's stillness returns, the one that lets you work near live current without making yourself part of the circuit. I call Gerald Park and switch to secure email. His checklist is immediate and clean. Proof of competence in a packet. The retirement binder with contribution history and no early withdrawals. The long-term care research I started and the quotes I'm scheduling. The security logs, the cease and desist to the dental office, the boundary agreement draft, my employment records, a written budget. With my consent, a letter from Dr. Pierce attesting to intact decision-making and boundary work. I open a fresh document titled Hargrove, Capacity, and start ordering the pieces by date like laying out tools by size. I do not answer the internet. Gerald is clear. Archive, don't engage. I write one private reply to Emma. I received the petition. I will participate respectfully. I'm still here to help with skills and structure. I do not accuse her of betrayal or ignorance. I name my intent, protect my autonomy and the relationship at the same time. Sentences that hold both truths feel like steel that learn to bend. In the afternoon, I meet Dr. Pierce and say the words out loud. My daughter asked a court to supervise my decisions. She nods and makes a space where the shock can sit without burning holes. We script statements that begin with I and end with facts. We practice saying no to traps that call themselves care. She assigns a ritual for the next 3 weeks. A bay walk where I count pylons and inventory, 5 things seen, 5 heard, 5 felt, so my body remembers the world is larger than a petition. On the way home, I call Tyler. I keep it short. We'll let the court process run. My offer to mentor stands. He is quiet for a long beat and then says he didn't expect the story to get this big. I hear a crack in the online armor and choose not to pry at it. The point is to keep the circuit from overheating, not to test its weakest link. Visible adulthood requires wardrobe and proof. I buy a navy suit that fits like competence and polish my shoes with a care I used to give my work boots. The red folder and the black notebook sit together on the dining table while I make a checklist for hydration, sleep, and no screens after 9. I write one line to read the morning of the hearing, hold the breaker, not the grudge. Small, steady acts keep me from drifting. I schedule 2 long-term care consultations. I book a SCORE meeting and copy Tyler and the mentor on the email so no one confuses invitation with pressure. I register for Emma's campus workshop as a listener, a seat in the back where I can watch her teach what she is still learning to live. Forward motion is the best exhibit when anyone questions capacity. Night folds itself over the bay. I lay out the packet in order on the table. Timeline, logs, receipts, letters, a cover sheet that reads Hargrove, Capacity, and Boundaries. The porch light throws its cone on wet boards. Rain stipples the glass like slow Morse code. The choice was never love or autonomy. The choice is both. Documented in public so the people who love me can stop guessing and the people who doubt me can stop assuming. I turn the lamp off and the room mirrors me, holding still. 3 weeks isn't long. It is exactly enough time to keep the right circuits labeled and my hands steady on the switch. The morning of the hearing is the kind of gray that flattens depth. Marine haze presses at the door sweep. Somewhere in the bay a ferry idles, diesel a faint bruise in the air. I dress in the navy suit and line the dining table, edge to edge with what I need. The red family, council folder, the black notebook, a protein bar I won't want but will eat anyway. Before I leave, I open the safe and lay 2 fingers on my father's union pin. 4 in, 6 out, breath like a metronome. The house clicks into locked positions behind me. Superior Court breathes marble and old paper. Security trays clack, umbrellas drip, shoes whisper over waxed floors. Gerald meets me by the elevators with a nod that says everything useful without wasting a word. In a glassed-in conference nook, we go once more through the plan. Facts only, no speculation about motive, lead with prudence. He lays the packet in order: timeline, exhibits, letters, employment verification, budget. I rehearse the sentence that holds the rest in place. I make slow, documented decisions. The courtroom is spare and brighter than I expect. We take our side of the table. Emma sits on the other, a campus advisor beside her like a bookend. Tyler slips into the back bench, jaw set but eyes moving, and Denise slides in late and leans near the aisle with her phone sleeping face down on her knee. The judge is a middle-aged woman whose voice carries without strain. The clerk stacks files with a kind of economy that makes time feel respectful. When the bailiff reads the case number, my pulse steadies as if a circuit finally made contact. Emma's affidavit lands first. An online article about elder financial decline, social posts cited as community concern, my refusal to share live balances framed as rigid. Her voice is level. She avoids words that bite and stays inside the language of prevention. It is care recast as oversight. It stings in the place where I used to confuse giving with being good. I keep my eyes on the judge and my hands flat on the table. Gerald stands and lets the packet do its work. Logs from the plan administrator, Tacoma IP, dental office terminal, intern access. My response: freeze, passphrase, two-factor hardened, cease and desist. Contribution history with no early withdrawals. Calendar entries for long-term care consults. The boundary agreement draft that replaces urgency with process. Employment verification. A plain budget that accounts for weather, not wish. Dr. Pierce's letter attesting to intact decision-making and the boundary work underway. Gerald never hurries a period. He makes prudence sound like what it is, unglamorous foresight. The judge asks questions without drama. Any evidence of asset dissipation? Emma says no. Any medical documentation of impairment? No again. The judge turns to me. Why withhold live balances? I keep my answer short enough to fit in one breath. Boundaries prevent dependency and fraud, I say. I disclose by process, not impulse. The judge writes something I can't see and looks up with the kind of expression people use when their minds have already settled, but their mouths have to make it official. The ruling is firm and neutral. The legal threshold isn't met. No evidence of diminished capacity. Petition denied. The court suggests voluntary family counseling or a written boundary agreement if we want structure going forward. The gavel doesn't bang, it doesn't have to. The air shifts anyway, like a room that's been listening finally lets itself breathe. Emma's shoulders drop, color rising in her face that is not anger. Relief sneaks in at the edges and collides with embarrassment in the middle. Tyler exhales so loudly the bailiff glances over. He looks older all at once, as if the last hour recalibrated him. Denise is unreadable. She collects her coat and leaves quickly, phone already brightening in her hand as she moves down the corridor. In the hallway, I choose words the way I choose tools, no extras. I thank Emma for bringing her worry into daylight and ask that next time she come to me first, not the internet and not a courthouse. Ask me before you look, I say. We can always set a time to talk. She nods and says she'll sign the boundary agreement when Gerald sends it. Her voice is small, but it doesn't shake. Gerald drafts a short memo to all of us while we stand at a high table outside the clerk's window. Outcome, next steps, a proposed date for a 30-day review. I sign a narrow release that allows Emma to receive a summary of my long-term care consults. Outcomes, not balances. Transparency with limits feels like a bridge that knows its load rating. We walk to a burger place across from the courthouse because simple food has a way of returning people to scale. We share fries and conversation slides to weather, a mariner's trade rumor, and Emma's favorite student's thesis about resilience that avoids the word like a crutch. Tyler admits his ad spend flop and watches as I draw a collections cadence on a napkin. Weekday targets, call windows, scripts that get invoices paid without burning bridges. Skill, not cash. The napkin goes into his pocket the way tools used to go in mine. On the drive home, I pass a billboard promising to unlock your potential in 3 clicks and 90 days. I picture the fonts migrating across my kids' screens all day long and choose empathy over judgment. It isn't character that makes people reach for fast money. It's air saturated with shortcuts masquerading as plans. You have to ventilate an atmosphere like that before you can breathe the slower kind. Mr. Beck brings 2 bottles of root beer to the porch at dusk. We sit on the steps and watch the bay trade gray for blue. He listens while I lay out the bones of the day without adding meat from my pride. Sometimes the bravest yes, he says, is the one you give to your own plan. I tell him the line I learned this season, and the kindest no is the one you stick to. We clink glass, a small sound that feels clean. Later, the kitchen light lays a soft bar across the binder's spine. I write in the notebook, guardianship denied, boundaries affirmed, relationship intact, fragile. Under that, teach, don't rescue. I add the 30-day family review to the calendar and shut the book. Outside, the clouds thin and a north wind clears the haze from the water. It isn't summer, it isn't even warm. But the view widens enough to see where the next marker might stand. And for now, that is plenty. The morning after court opens wide and clear, a high, clean light on the bay like someone washed the window of the world. I copy last night's line from my notebook, teach, don't rescue, onto a fresh page and box it twice. Then I block the calendar, weekly mentor sessions with Tyler on Wednesdays, a Sunday check-in thread called Hargrove Ops, with rules posted at the top. Progress only, no live balances, requests by email with a day's buffer. Boundaries can be friendly if they arrive with instructions. Tyler's first session happens at my kitchen table. No slides allowed. I set a legal pad between us and draw 3 columns: customer, invoice date, promised pay date. Under that, a 3-step collections cadence: email, call, friendly escalation with a late fee clause he actually intends to use. We replace runway talk with cash conversion math. What comes in, when, and how to shorten the distance between service and money. He winces when we total fuel costs and sees how 1 late payment buckles 2 weeks. Then he nods like a man who has finally grabbed the right wrench. He leaves with 2 calls to make before Friday and a script that fits on 1 index card. Practicality loosens a person's shoulders in a way pep never does. Emma's turn is at a quiet cafe where conversations keep their coats on. We open a sub-account named Calm 1200 and set an automatic transfer of the first $100 from each paycheck to land before she can find a reason to spend it. We trim 3 small discretionary habits she volunteers, not ones I choose for her. The point isn't austerity, it's agency. I ask her to draft a 1-page handout for a campus workshop on boundaries and care. She writes a working title that makes me smile. Asking without trespassing. The best lessons are the ones you need to hear as you teach them. On Sunday night, Hargrove Ops chimes politely. Tyler reports his first paid invoice under the new cadence. Emma posts a screenshot of the Calm 1200 balance with the cents covered by her thumb. I add dates for my long-term care consultations. No confetti, no emojis. The tone is adult and light, like a team that knows what a week is for. I keep my own infrastructure in motion. 2 LTC consults on the books, a follow-up with Dr. Pierce, and a promise to myself to walk the bay 3 mornings this week. Boundaries are not a mood. They're a maintenance plan. Midweek, the bank's security team calls to confirm a voice request to change my 2-factor phone. The clip they play for me sounds like me. My cadence, my flattened vowels, even the pause I take when I'm deciding whether to sign something. The bank refused the change, protocol held, but the attempt is logged with a VOIP trail from nowhere in particular. Cold ripples through my skin, and then the practiced calm stands up and takes the chair. I ask for the fraud packet, audio file, timestamp, metadata, and a note added to my accounts. No phone changes by voice, ever. When Tyler arrives for session 2, I play him the bank's sample and slide the printed log across the table. His face drains in stages. He recognizes phrases used in the recording because he heard them from a contact who bragged about security bypass services for founders with stubborn parents. He stares at the floor long enough to count the lines in the plank and tells me the name. He says he cut ties the minute the pitch turned from persuasion to impersonation. "I'll send their messages to the bank," he adds, voice low. I nod once. We call the bank's fraud unit together and forward everything, then file an information report with the police so a number exists if the story grows. I add telecom account passwords and an in-person verification note to the file. Paper builds a wall that keeps panic on the other side. Tyler surprises me that night by posting a clean correction online. He retracts the vague story, says no one has the right to impersonate family, and states he cut ties with anyone who suggested it. Comments tilt mixed and then settle respectful. Emma adds a small note about learning boundaries and about asking before looking. I don't post. I save screenshots and close the apps. Not every repair needs an audience. Emma and I debrief the deepfake over coffee. We talk about how fear dresses itself as care, how the mind justifies a peek by calling it protection. We signed the family boundary agreement that Gerald drafted. Privacy, process, a support menu, a review schedule. It lands in my email with the click of a pen I can feel even through glass. She sends me the workshop handout. I suggest we swap moralizing for verbs. Ask, pause, verify. We add a sidebar on tech-enabled impersonation, warning signs for deepfake voices and VoIP requests that rush you past verification. The handout grows into a small tool we can pass around her campus in Tyler's founder circle. It isn't a wall, it's a handrail. Sunday again, Tyler closes 2 collections and circles a third. Emma hits 250 in Calm 1200 and grins without apology. I finished the first LTC consult and shortlist providers who answered my most boring questions well. We lock a date for our 30-day review on Gerald's calendar. The thread goes quiet with the kind of satisfaction that doesn't need fireworks. Somewhere in that week, a subtle turn happens. The kids' messages start to sound like updates instead of asks. Their tone carries weight, not hunger. Pride arrives separate from relief and sits down like it belongs. The house feels different even when no one else is in it, as if the air itself moved furniture back to reasonable places. At dusk, I stand on the porch and let the north wind clear the day from my face. The light throws a steady cone over the boards. On the table behind me, the signed boundary agreement, Emma's handout with my red lines, Tyler's dog-eared cadence card, the perimeter held. But more than that, it taught. It turned the volume down enough for competence to be heard. Tomorrow will bring its own weather, but tonight the bay is glassy and the windows are clean. If you can see your reflection and the horizon at the same time, you're where you need to be. Spring arrives like a lens wiped clean. Mornings in Bellingham are crisp enough to sting and clear enough to show the mountains in full relief. The bay brightens early, small craft moving like purposeful commas under a sky that finally remembers how to be blue. Inside, my rhythms feel lighter. Coffee stays warm because I'm not pacing. The porch light timer ticks on and off like a metronome that learned patience. In the notebook, last week's pages close the loop, signed boundary agreement, Hargrove Ops holding its shape. First long-term care consult completed with a short list that makes sense in plain English. I meet an independent broker in a small office that smells like paper and honesty. We compare policies without drama. Daily benefit, inflation protection, elimination periods that won't bankrupt a man while he waits. I choose a plan that covers the likely and avoids the ornate, then file the binder under a new spine, health and longevity. Back home, I update my will and advance directive, confirm beneficiaries, and appoint a conditional financial power of attorney with triggers spelled in hard numbers and doctor signatures. It is not a blank check. It is a lever behind glass. I schedule a practice day on the calendar to simulate a move at 63, what to keep, what to sell, what to hand off with a label and a story. Tyler's updates have changed key. He reports 2 more paid routes, a renegotiated fuel surcharge, and a modest month that actually cash flowed positive after the boring bills got paid. The collections cadence card I gave him lives in his wallet now, corner soft, ink smudged by useful hands. I verify the targets we set and send the small gift I promised, a seed of trust, not a bridge from my retirement. The transfer lands without ceremony and without a string attached to my ankle. Emma crosses her first threshold and doesn't stop. The emergency fund hits $1,200 and keeps going because the automation never turned off. She renames the account Calm 3600, a new horizon written in the same steady font. When she co-leads the Boundaries and Care workshop, she adds a section on tech-enabled impersonation and keeps our case study anonymous but clear. I sit in the back row, the kind of pride that warms without swelling. It feels less like ownership and more like sunlight. Denise settles into a stable orbit. Our emails are polite and brief, the way you greet a neighbor who shares a fence you both intend to keep mended. She confirms staff retraining at the dental office and device lock policies rewritten in bold. There are no more calls that oil slopes. Boundaries with her are functional rather than frosty, which is all I want. We run the first monthly review with Gerald by video. It takes 15 minutes and feels like adult weather. Everyone affirms the agreement was honored, privacy kept, process followed, support used without raids on the future. We add 2 amendments. Tyler may submit a quarterly metric snapshot instead of improvising under pressure. Emma may receive summary outcomes of my health planning, consults finished, policies chosen, but not balances. The e-sign trail files itself, and a shared calendar adds next month's review without fanfare. We mark the quiet with a small dinner. Clam chowder simmers on my stove, garlic bread toasts under the broiler, and the kitchen fills with the kind of smell that pulls people into a room. The kids wash dishes unprompted, sleeves pushed to elbows, water running steady. Conversation wanders through a mariner's win, a neighbor's garden that finally took, and the first warm weekend on the forecast. Ease sits at the table and does not require speeches about gratitude. Mr. Beck drops by a day later with smoked salmon on butcher paper. We sit on the porch and fold paper boats for his grandkids to float in the bird bath. He taps the edge of a crease until it holds. Plans that survive spring cleaning, he says, are the ones worth keeping. I answer, and the ones you can teach. We nod at the same angle. Mentorship, it turns out, replaced rescue and kept the family intact without turning me into a wallet with a pulse. I sketch the outline of a cabin life on a yellow pad, a timeline for listing the house at 63, a budget for a small place near a lake where morning light comes through trees, a short list of what makes the trip, the binder, the union pin, a skillet that browns evenly, a kettle that sings instead of screams. I print directions to a town 2 hours east and circle a diner to try. Practice keeps a man from mistaking fantasy for a plan. There's a private ritual I didn't plan but keep repeating. I open the safe and check the tabs: health and longevity, retirement, security, family, counsel. The union pin rests on top, a compass I didn't earn but can still point with. I write a new line in the notebook. I refuse today so we could choose tomorrow. I leave the safe ajar while I tidy the closet and then click it shut. Security is a tool to be used, not an altar to be worshipped. Outside, alarms are quiet. No suspicious logins ping in the night. The bank is silent except for routine alerts I asked for. Telecom accounts show no changes. The fraud case sleeps in a file with Tyler's evidence stapled in neat stacks. Hargrove Ops hums each Sunday, brief notes, real wins, small course corrects. The thread reads like adults doing the week. Inside, the real measure shifts. The kids ask for advice earlier now, not for money later. Their questions arrive with context and options, as if they learn that asking well is its own competence. I can tell the difference between being needed for rescue and being wanted for wisdom. I choose the latter and find I don't miss the old demand at all. I give myself a morning on a trail near town. The cap I had printed for Tyler, cash flow greater than pitch, rides in my back pocket. At an overlook, I pour coffee from a small thermos and let the steam write brief ghosts in the air. I name 3 things I'm honestly grateful for: the patience that held, the proof that taught, the family that stayed. Gratitude, done right, doesn't erase the cost. It counts it and pays on time. Evening settles warm and patient. The porch light glows on schedule. The bay lays a strip of silver under a clean moon as if drawing a road where none is paved. On the table, the signed agreement, Emma's workshop flyer, Tyler's latest paid-in-full invoice, and my cabin sketch stand like small flags staked in real ground. Chapter 10 will be a note to my future self and to whoever loves me enough to read it after I'm gone. For now, the house breathes, the plan holds, and the water beyond the window looks wide enough to carry what comes next. The bay is a silver seam tonight, a thin stitch of moonlight laid across dark water. I sit at the dining table with a fresh page open and the binder closed, the union pen resting where my hand can touch it without looking. This isn't a victory lap or a grievance log. It's a note for the man I'll be at 63 in a smaller place by a lake. A man I hope will still recognize the tools that kept this house quiet when the weather turned. First truth: say no early. A soft no today costs less than a broken plan tomorrow. Second, document slowly. Paper is a civilizing force. Dates and signatures calm storms that words alone can't touch. Third, teach before you fund. If help is only money, it ends when the transfer clears. If help is skill, structure, and time, it keeps paying out after the noise dies down. Fourth, process over impulse. A cooling window is not coldness. It is respect for your future self, for the people who love you, and for the math that does not care about anyone's mood. I write to Tyler without addressing it to him. Keep the cadence card close. Collections are conversations, not confrontations. Kindness with a clock attached gets paid more often than a threat shouted late. Pride travels better when it's stapled to repeatable systems than when it rides a moment of applause. The only growth worth bragging about is the kind that survives inventory. I write to Emma next. Care requires consent. Ask, pause, verify. You can't protect someone by sneaking past their boundaries and calling it love. Teach what you are learning and verify what you are teaching. The classroom and the living room share a rule: curiosity before conclusion. Love and autonomy were never opposite sides. The corrosion came when obligation posed as love and secrecy dressed itself as protection. Saying no kept the relationship from being salted by debts we wouldn't name. Boundaries did not lock doors, they labeled them. Trust returned in proportion to transparency with limits, the way a window opens to a safety stop, enough for air, not enough for a fall. Tools to keep, the Sunday Hargrove Ops thread paired to wins and lessons. Quarterly boundary reviews with short agendas and shorter meetings. Bay walks that count pylons when the mind wants to count slights. Hardware keys instead of wishful passwords. A written agenda before any quick chat about money. 36 hours between a request and a decision. Teach, don't rescue, written on the inside cover where your thumb lands when you open the book. A practice day every spring where you pack 2 boxes and test the idea of leaving. So leaving, when it comes, is a choice, not a panic. Name the air you're breathing. Quick money will always advertise itself as empowerment. Social feeds will always offer a court without a judge. Deepfake voices will ask you to rush past verification and promise to save you time. Red flags to reread each year. Urgency that cancels process, secrecy marketed as care, shame used as a lever. Update the family handout on tech-enabled impersonation the way you update smoke alarm batteries. On schedule, not after a fire. Gratitude without debt. Dr. Pierce for giving me language that held when my temper wanted to run. Gerald for structure that refused drama. Mr. Beck for the plain wisdom you can carry in your pocket. The bank fraud team for a protocol that did its job when a voice pretended to be mine. My past self for the boring contributions that built a quiet life. My kids for staying in the room when the room got bright. And one line for Denise. Polite distance is also a kind of peace. I forgive the years I worked through milestones and mistook overtime for proof that I loved enough. The cost is noted, not excused away. I release the urge to be understood by strangers. The screenshots are history now, not identity. The guardianship petition is a closed folder with a lesson taped to the front. Boundaries should be legible long before a judge reads them. Non-monetary gifts set down while the pen is steady, a ride-along day with Tyler each spring where we talk shop over gas station coffee and a truck that smells like work. A yearly guest lecture with Emma where I sit in the back and answer questions about process without pretending to be wise. Access to my network notes so the introductions outlive my phone. A standing invitation to fish the first Saturday of June. Money is a separate category, planned in daylight, never in a hurry. 2 lines to carry on hard days. Hold the breaker, not the grudge. The circuit you keep from overheating matters more than the apology you never get. And consent before access. Love before ledger. If you can say those out loud before you answer a request, you will answer it well. I return the union pin to the spot on the binder where it looks most like a compass. I check the safe latch gently, not like a guard dog, more like a man confirming that a tool is put away clean. The cabin sketch folds into the notebook pocket, not as a wish, but as a line on a plan. I set the porch light timer for dawn. On the porch, the north wind is light and the water holds its silver seam. The house breathes evenly. Refrigerator, heater, the small tick of the wall clock. An orchestra of ordinary that I've come to hear as wealth. If the future throws weather, the map is here. Say no early, document slowly, teach before you fund, and let process do the part of love that will never make a good story but will make a good life. Refusal, used well, is care. Boundaries are how love endures weather. I turn back inside and leave the door to catch on the latch, a quiet sound that means the night can get on with being night and the plan can hold until morning. Sometimes the hardest act of love is saying no with grace. True peace doesn't come from control or surrender, but from balance, the quiet confidence of knowing where you end and where others begin. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges built with clarity and respect. Thank you for watching and sharing this journey. If this story moved you, leave a comment below, subscribe, and stay with us for more heartfelt stories that remind us what family truly means.